Peace be upon you, and welcome to a new episode. In this video, I'm going to tell you a true story. A story about an island in the middle of the Nile. At first glance, it looked like any quiet place in Upper Egypt, full of palm trees and green fields. But beneath the surface, there was an unimaginable terror. Imagine this. In February 2004, the Egyptian police gathered an enormous force. More than 3,000 soldiers, 50 armored vehicles, and 60 riverboats. And they surrounded this island for many days. People in the nearby villages were terrified, not knowing what was happening. But those inside the island were living in a nightmare. After 7 days of siege, the police decided to storm in. They entered under heavy gunfire and explosions, and suddenly they discovered vast lands filled with strange crops, not wheat or corn, but opium and hashish. Half a ton of drugs was hidden in the fields. Underground there were deep trenches, watchtowers 15 meters high, barbed wires stretched even across the waters to block anyone from crossing the Nile, and gas cylinders rigged to the fences ready to explode, as if it were a world war. Even more terrifying were the signs of brutal clashes, bodies scattered across the land, some burned, others thrown into the Nile. Hostages were kept in tight spaces, blindfolded, fearing for their lives, telling stories of the horror they endured, trapped without food or water, while the sound of gunfire never stopped. How did it get to this point? Who turned this peaceful island into a criminal fortress full of weapons, drugs, and blood? And how could one man control 280 acres of land and force the entire state to treat him like an international enemy? Did this nightmare truly end, or are there still secrets hidden in the dark? Before we begin our story, don't forget to like and share this episode so it can reach as many people as possible. And stay tuned every Saturday, Monday, and Wednesday for a new episode. Without further delay, let's dive deep into our story. Our story begins in 1963 in a small village called Nakheela Island, which belongs to the Abu Tig district in Asyut Governorate, right in the heart of Upper Egypt. That year, a boy named Ezzat Hanafi was born into a well-known and powerful family in the area, the Hanafi family. They owned vast agricultural lands and were among the wealthiest families on Nakheela Island. Ezzat was the middle child among 4 brothers, Mamdouh Hanafi, the eldest, who acted as the leader of the family. He was always the one planning the farm work and assigning tasks to his brothers, saying things like, "This field will be for sugarcane, that one for bananas, and don't forget irrigation in the morning." Rashad Hanafi, who was quiet but fierce in disputes. He didn't talk much, but when problems arose, he turned into a lion. Hassan Hanafi, who was Ezzat's partner in every small childhood adventure. And finally, Hamdan Hanafi, known as Hamdani, who would later become Ezzat's right-hand man, the one who followed orders without question. The family was relatively wealthy, but not educated. Their father was a simple farmer, keen that his children learn at least some reading, writing, and arithmetic to manage the lands. He used to tell them, "This land is our wealth. You must know how to calculate crops and money." Life in Upper Egypt, however, was full of toughness, honor, and also blood feuds that lasted for years and claimed many lives. People often solved problems with weapons. Revenge, thar, was treated like a sacred duty. If someone from your family was killed, you had to retaliate. This constant cycle of feuds filled life with tension. From a young age, Ezzat was very intelligent and loved to control those around him. He would organize games with his brothers as if they were little wars, dividing land between them and guarding it from imaginary enemies. This was an early sign of what would come later in his life, because he was learning how controlling land meant power and how good planning could make rivals afraid. Ezzat grew up in an environment full of challenges. The fertile lands around the Nile were tempting to all families, each one eager to expand. Family disputes were an everyday thing, like the one in 1967, when the Hanafi sons carried out a massacre against the Jafra family, burning 7 of them alive in a feud over a piece of land. The crime was simple, yet bloody in its planning. The Hanafi family gathered their men at a nighttime meeting, divided tasks. One brought gasoline, another surrounded the house, another lit the fire. The police in Asyut conducted only a very basic investigation. Witnesses were too afraid to speak because the family was powerful. In the end, the case didn't progress as it should have. There were no harsh sentences, and the Hanafi family came out even stronger. Their reputation in the area grew. People feared them, but at the same time respected them, because sometimes they also showed generosity, helping neighbors with farming or protecting the village from outside thieves. Ezzat was observing all of this, quietly planning in his mind how he could use this power to build something greater. Not just farming, something that would make his name resonate across all of Upper Egypt like a small emperor in his village. He was studying how land and weapons went hand in hand, because in Upper Egypt, anyone with land but no weapons would quickly lose it, but someone with weapons could easily seize the land of others. By the 1970s, Ezzat began helping with the family's lands, planning harvest seasons, and dividing fields. But his mind was already thinking of bigger things, like how to expand their activities into unusual, more profitable trades. The years passed, and life was relatively calm. Ezzat grew into a young man in his 20s, working the lands with his brothers. He planned seasonal farming, divided the fields, bought seeds from the markets in Asyut, and sold the crops in larger markets like Cairo. But for Ezzat, that wasn't enough. He felt there were bigger opportunities. In Upper Egypt, trade wasn't only in farming, it was also in weapons. With the nearby border to Sudan and the heavy smuggling from Libya, weapons were in high demand. They were necessary both for protection against rivals and as goods to sell to other families. In the 1980s, Ezzat began planning. He started by buying simple weapons, like pistols and rifles, from traders in Asyut to protect his family's land from enemies, and at the same time selling to other families for money or land. This was just the beginning of a small illegal trade network. He planned these deals in secret meetings with his brothers, telling them, "These weapons are for our protection, but also for money. We'll buy from this trader in Badari and sell to the Sabak family in exchange for a piece of land." The small police investigations in Abu Tig at the time were very basic, just asking about missing weapons or rumors of deals. But Ezzat hid the evidence carefully. He buried weapons in the fields under crops and arranged meetings in remote places out of sight, like caves in the mountains near Nakheela Island. This allowed him to build connections with arms dealers in nearby areas like Badari and Alikal al-Qibli, gradually expanding his influence. People in the village began to sense his power, but in secret, he was building a network that would only grow with time. The major turning point came in 1990, specifically on November 30th, 1990, when a massive bloody fight broke out between the Hanafi family and the Qawasim family. Many victims fell on both sides, with bullets flying everywhere for hours. Houses were filled with screams, and people were too afraid to leave their homes. Ezzat and his brother Hassan were at the heart of this conflict. They carefully planned the attack to take revenge for an old land dispute. 2 days before the incident, Ezzat gathered his men for a nighttime meeting and divided the tasks. He told Hassan, You bring the weapons from the storage under the palm trees. Rashad will surround the house from the north, and Hamdani will attack from the south. We can't let anyone escape. This is our revenge, and we must take it. They used the simple weapons they had, pistols and rifles, and attacked at night, firing randomly at the rival's house, killing people and spilling blood across the land. Investigations began immediately by the police in Asyut Governorate. Survivors from the other family testified about how Ezzat shouted orders during the gunfire. "Shoot there! Don't let the men escape!" Evidence was collected, bullet casings scattered on the ground, and bodies partially burned from the fire that spread in the house. The prosecution in Asyut interrogated Ezzat and Hassan for many days, asking questions like, "How did you gather the weapons? Who fired the first shot? What was the main reason for the feud?" In the end, they were sentenced to 15 years in prison. They entered prison at the end of 1990, expected to spend those years in the cramped cells of Asyut prison, thinking about the future and discussing how to come out stronger. But fate had a different plan. Because Egypt was soon facing a brutal wave of terrorism in the 1990s, and the state needed help from the people of Upper Egypt. In the 1990s, terrorism spread across Upper Egypt. Groups like Al-Ghama al-Islamiyya targeted both officers and civilians. It began with the assassination of Dr. Rifa'at el-Mahgoub in 1990, the attempted assassination of Safwat el-Sharif in 1993, and the attack on Naguib Mahfouz in 1994. The incident seemed endless. The terrorists hid in the mountains and dense farmlands, places where no one could enter except the local people who knew the secret passes and hideouts. The Ministry of Interior planned to rely on the major families of Upper Egypt. The Hanafi family was the first choice. Their lands were vast, and their men were strong. So, in 1994, the Interior Ministry decided to release Ezzat and Hassan from prison after only 4 years in exchange for their help in combating terrorism. The plan for their release was secret. Major General Nasser Zahir, Assistant Minister of Interior for Public Security, held a meeting in Cairo with Ezzat and his brothers. He told them, "Help us eliminate the terrorists, especially in the mountains and farmlands of Asyut. We'll stand by you, protect you from your rivals, and give you official weapons." Ezzat immediately agreed. He planned the operations with precision, dividing his men into small units. They entered the mountains and caves, searched for terrorists through long nights, besieged their hideouts, and handed them over to the police. The Interior Ministry supplied them with official state-issued weapons, Miri guns and government-marked bullets, so the operations appeared legitimate. They coordinated daily with Habib el-Adli, who later became Minister of Interior in 1997. After every operation, investigations included official Interior Ministry reports and testimonies from captured terrorists who admitted Ezzat and his men were the ones who surrounded our hideout. In 1994, they played a major role in an operation against Naji, a former officer who had defected and formed a terrorist cell. He was responsible for killing more than 300 people, especially targeting police officers. Ezzat planned the attack on Naji's house, which was like a fortress in Asyut, complete with watchtowers, armed guards, and gas cylinders rigged for explosions. Ezzat split his men into groups and launched a night raid. Gunfire erupted. They killed Naji's son and several of his men, and wounded Naji himself. The Interior Ministry later arrested him. The investigation collected testimonies from the participants and even from Naji, who confessed, "It was the Hanafi family who stormed my hideout." As a reward, General Hassan el-Alfi, the Minister of Interior at the time, offered Ezzat a check worth £500,000 Egyptian pounds. But Ezzat refused, saying, "This is a national duty." Yet behind the scenes, Ezzat wanted something far more valuable: immunity for his trucks, which he claimed were loaded with livestock. This meant no checkpoints would search them on the roads. That immunity marked the beginning of his drug empire. He realized the state would stand by him, so he gradually shifted to this new trade. He began by secretly obtaining opium seeds from local dealers in Upper Egypt, planting them on small plots of land at first, testing both the soil and the protection around him. By the mid-1990s, Ezzat began planning to build a true empire on Nakheela Island. The first step was seizing land. He aimed to gather about 280 Feuds. Part of it he bought with money from the poor, and the rest he took by force. He would threaten people, sending his men to surround houses for nights on end, telling the owners, "Sell the land for a cheap price or I'll take it by force." The process took years. He started with small deals, buying a plot here and there, then pressured weaker farmers. Sometimes he staged small attacks, like firing warning shots at their houses at night, until fear forced them to sell. The few police investigations that followed were quickly closed because Ezzat was backed by the Interior Ministry. Witnesses were too scared to testify, often saying, "Nothing happened, it's just a local dispute." The second step was drug cultivation. He planned to plant opium in the winter, when the cold climate suited it, and hashish in the summer. He divided the land into large plots, secretly obtaining seeds from dealers in Cairo or Alexandria. He carefully organized irrigation and harvest schedules, telling his men, "This field will grow opium. Guard it 24 hours a day. When it's harvested, we'll hide it in crates underground." The operations expanded gradually. He started with small fields, testing the soil, then enlarged the crops. The drugs were sold to dealers in big cities. For transport, he used trucks loaded with livestock, knowing they would not be searched thanks to his immunity from the Interior Ministry. Later investigations revealed these operations. The police gathered intelligence from spies inside the island who reported on Ezzat's meetings, saying, "He's planning new plantations." The third step was weapons trafficking. Ezzat exploited the guns he had already received from the Interior Ministry and began purchasing more, smuggled through the Sudan border. He planned major deals, contacting arms dealers in Libya, saying, "I want Grenoff guns and half-inch cannons with a range of 7 kilometers. I'll pay in cash." He sold them to families in Upper Egypt in exchange for money or land. The operations were kept secret. Weapons were hidden in underground bunkers on his lands, while his men trained with them in nighttime drills in the nearby mountains. He divided them into groups. This group will train on machine guns, that one on cannons. Most of his men were fugitives, criminals sentenced to death or life imprisonment. Ezzat recruited them, offering a safe haven on the island in return for loyalty. He told them, "With me, you'll be protected from the police. But you must follow my orders, guard the land, and kill anyone who comes near." Investigations into the arms trade often began with small complaints. The police would hear rumors about a deal, but Ezzat erased all evidence. He buried the weapons and used his connections inside the Interior Ministry to shut down the cases. By 1997, the crimes escalated. Habib el-Adli became Minister of Interior, and with terrorism almost eradicated, the Interior Ministry began to withdraw its protection. Ezzat sensed the danger. He started planning to fortify Nakheela Island like a military base. He dug deep trenches around the entire island, built 15-meter watchtowers to spot anyone approaching from afar, strung barbed wire even across the Nile, so boats could not enter without being trapped, and hung gas cylinders along the walls, ready to explode at the push of a button if attacked. The construction took months. Ezzat personally supervised the work, dividing his men into shifts. Investigations into the fortifications began after rumors spread in Asyut, where people whispered, "Ezzat is building a fortress, but why all this?" Still, the Interior Ministry could not act immediately, lacking solid evidence. Between 1999 and 2004, 103 people were killed on Nakheela Island. Ezzat planned murders with extreme precision. If a journalist tried to expose his drug trade, he would order his men to kidnap him at night, torture him in an underground chamber, and execute him with a bullet to the head. Then the body would be thrown into the Nile to disappear. Execution was swift, and investigations usually began with missing persons reports. Police would listen, collect testimonies, but witnesses were terrified. They would say, "We don't know anything. Maybe he ran away." Any journalist who shed light on the story would meet the same fate, like many before. Even members of parliament were too afraid to speak. Ezzat threatened them, sending secret messages. Investigations into these threats were weak, since there was no written evidence. Still, the Interior Ministry was gradually building a file on him. The big feud erupted in 2001 with the Sabak family on Nakheela Island. Marzouk Sabak, the family elder, decided to build a large house directly in front of Ezzat's. Ezzat didn't like this act of defiance, so he carefully planned an attack. He called his brothers, saying, "Bring the weapons from the storage. We strike today." He took a rifle and opened fire on the construction site. The Sabak family retaliated, killing Ezzat Hanafi with a bullet to the head in front of his house. Ezzat immediately sought revenge. He organized a massive raid, dividing his men into groups, and at night they attacked the Sabak home, killing 5 members. The gun battle lasted for days, with many casualties on both sides. Villagers were terrified, doors locked, and blood covered the streets. Police investigations began from Abutig Station, where bodies and testimonies were collected. Witnesses said, "Ezzat planned the feud. He started it." But Ezzat used his connections within the Interior Ministry to delay the case. This feud opened the door to even bigger rivalries. Ezzat expanded his fortifications, adding landmines and heavy artillery. Then, in February 2004, the incident that changed everything took place. 5 people were killed in a family dispute on the island. Ezzat had planned the murders to end his rivalry with the Sabak family. He ordered his men to strike, and they killed the 5. The Interior Ministry uncovered this horror through months of investigations, collecting intelligence from spies inside the island. They revealed details about drug cultivation, weapons, and Ezzat's daily strategy meetings. So, the ministry planned a full-scale siege. First, they cut the electricity to the island. Then came a 7-day siege with 50 armored vehicles, 3,000 Special Forces soldiers, and 60 river gunboats. Ezzat prepared his defense. He took 13 hostages from local families, threatening to kill them if attacked. He even contacted media outlets like France Press, claiming, "The state wants to get rid of me after I helped it against terrorism. All these weapons came from them." He used the hostages as human shields. The assault began on March 1, 2004. The Interior Ministry built towers along the railway and carved a new path to bypass the fortifications. They launched 50 mortar shells on Ezzat's house, destroying towers and trenches. Ezzat ordered the detonation of gas cylinders, creating a hell of fire, but the police kept advancing. Ezzat tried to escape, hiding in a pile of clover on a donkey, but was captured. He attempted suicide with poison, but was rushed to Asyut University Hospital in critical condition. There, in a televised interview, he denied all charges, saying, "This island has 15 families. It's not just me. Every farmer here has weapons." The trial began in 2004 with charges of murder, drugs, weapons, and kidnapping. Investigations went on for months, and the prosecution gathered testimonies from hostages and witnesses who spoke about the planning. On June 28, 2005, Ezzat and Hamdan were sentenced to death, along with a fine of 100,000 Egyptian pounds. The execution took place on June 18, 2006, in Borg El Arab prison in Alexandria, carried out by Hussein Orangi, known as Al-Ashmawi. Ezzat remained calm. He wrote a will returning lands to 17 people, naming them one by one, and said, "Finish it quickly. I want to die quickly." But the suspense didn't end there. In 2015, Mamdouh Hanafi claimed that Ezzat was not dead and that the body executed belonged to someone else. The rumors kept spreading all the way until 2025, with some people saying, "Ezzat is alive, living in a secret place with the help of powerful people." The investigations into these rumors never proved anything, but they left people wondering, did the empire really end? The lesson, my friends, is that crime never pays, and injustice never lasts, no matter how clever the planning. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe, and stay tuned for a new episode. Goodbye.